Welcome to the deep dive. So you sent us some really fascinating material on Howrah. It's clearly a place with a history stretching way back, centuries even.
Absolutely.
And our mission today is basically to unpack the most captivating, the most significant moments that have really shaped this region for you. Our listeners, we want to give you a clear understanding of its rich heritage.
Yeah, it's a great set of sources you brought together. And diving into them, it's so clear Howard's story isn't just modern. It's really built on, well, layers and layers of history.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning then. The name, Howrah. It seems there are several pretty interesting ideas about where that actually came from.
There are, yeah. One theory, quite compelling actually, suggests it evolved from Harira.
Harira.
Apparently that was the name of a village in the area, maybe early 18th century. So Howrah could just be a later version of that original name.
Okay, that makes sense. Place names do shift over time, definitely. But I saw theories connected to the land itself too, right?
Precisely. Another idea links it to Habra,
Well-
which paints a very different picture. A place abundant in mud and slush.
Oh, right.
And then there's a similar thought, kind of related, that Harat just described a low-lying area, prone to collecting rainwater, which, given the geography, seems pretty plausible.
So we've got a possible village name, descriptions of the sort of marshy terrain. Anything else?
Yes, actually, the linguist Sukumar Sen, he had a rather evocative take on it.
Ooh.
He proposed that Hara might even be onomatopoeic. It's a sound-based word.
Like representing a sound.
Exactly. Essentially meaning a place filled with water and mud. You can almost sort of hear the squelchiness in the name itself.
That's fascinating. The sound of the name may be echoing the environment. Okay, intriguing possibilities for the name. Now, let's journey much further back. The ancient roots, our sources talk a lot about the Bhurshut kingdom. Tell us about that.
Yeah, what's really remarkable is just how far back settlement goes here. The Bhurshut kingdom was a significant presence. We're talking ancient and medieval times in what we now call Howrah and Hooghly districts, southern part of the Rah region.
And the people there. Who were they? What do we know about them?
They were known as the Burashresti, and interestingly, the sources highlight they were primarily merchants.
Merchants, not warriors or farmers, primarily.
Seems that way. It's quite likely the kingdom itself got its name from these inhabitants, so maybe less about agriculture or military might,
Yeah.
and more centered on commerce, perhaps a more outward-looking society because of trade.
Huh.
And there's also a belief that Bhurshut might have been the original settlement for the Rahi Brahmins.
A kingdom founded by merchants. That really suggests a certain level of, well, prosperity and trade, doesn't it?
Precisely. And the sources back that up. They indicate that between, say, the 8th and 10th century CE, the Burashresti region Bhurshut was indeed a prosperous trading city. That's a good long period of commercial activity right there.
Any notable rulers or key events from this time that stand out in the sources?
Well, we hear about a King Sura during the Pala Empire era that was a major power in eastern India.
Right, 8th to 12th centuries.
Exactly. And then a series of feudal kings after that. But a particularly interesting figure is Queen Bhavashankari.
Okay.
She was apparently quite courageous, a strong leader, it seems. She was even honored with the title Rubagini by Emperor Akbar himself.
Wow, by Akbar. That's significant recognition, especially back then.
It really is. It speaks volumes about her influence, perhaps the kingdom's standing at the time. We also hear references to the kingdom in folk tales of the Daibar dynasty, maybe 14th, 15th centuries, and later Brahmin rule.
So, a lasting legacy. What about physical structures? Any settlements or fortifications mentioned?
Yes, the sources mention 3 forts, Garhabandapur, Pandua, which was also known as Pedobasantapur, and Rajbalhat.
And do they still exist?
Sadly, no. The forts themselves are gone. But interestingly, a place called Bhurshut still exists. It's near the Damodar River in the Rajbalhat area of Howrah district today.
Ah, so an echo of the past in the name.
Exactly. It suggests a continuity, even though the structures vanished. Their presence points to the area's strategic importance, though.
And there was a connection to a famous literary figure, too, wasn't there?
That's right. Raghunakar Bharachandra Ray, an 18th century Bengali poet, very well known. He lived in Bhurshut.
Heart of Bhurshut.
Yes, and there's a belief he might have actually belonged to the royal family of Bhurshut. So not just trade and strategy, but cultural connections too.
Fascinating. And was it completely isolated, this kingdom, or were there external influences?
Oh, definitely influences. For instance, around the 12th century CE, parts of what's now the Ulubiria subdivision within Howrah district
Yeah.
came under the rule of the Odisha kingdom. So even back then, the area was sort of a crossroads, subject to different powers.
Okay, so we've explored this ancient kingdom. Let's move forward a bit into the medieval period. The focus seems to shift more towards trade again and ports. Saptagram comes up.
Yes, Saptagram was a major port in Bengal during medieval times. Really significant.
Yeah.
And crucially for Howrah's story, a major trade route went right through the area that is now Howrah district.
How did that work?
It used the Saraswati River to reach Saptagram. So even then, Howrah's location, its geography, was vital for these trade networks.
But rivers change, don't they? I understand the Saraswati became less navigable over time.
Exactly right. As the Saraswati silted up or shifted, making navigation harder, another place in Howrah started gaining prominence. That was Betor.
Betor, okay.
It was situated right at the confluence of the Bhagavarathi and Saraswati rivers. So it became a kind of alternative port to Saptagram.
So Howrah's importance didn't just vanish with the Saraswati.
Not at all. It shows this remarkable adaptability, doesn't it? The region shifted its economic focus as the geography changed. Its location at the confluence made Betor a natural successor, really laying groundwork for later roles.
And we actually have accounts from travelers from that time giving us a glimpse.
We do, which is fantastic. There was a Venetian traveler, Cesare Federici. He was in India in the late 16th century.
Right.
And in his writings from 1578, he specifically mentions a place called Betor.
Betor, close to Betor.
Very close. He describes it having facilities for ships, probably using the Hooghly River, and suggests it was likely a commercial port. You can almost picture him there centuries ago, noting this down.
That's incredible, a direct link from a European traveler back then.
It really brings it home how long Howrah's been a point of connection.
Right.
And it's not just Federici.
Oh,
Betor is also mentioned in the Mangala Chandi Kavya, that's a religious text, Bengali, from around 1495 by Biprata's Pipalai.
so local literature confirms it too.
Exactly. We have both travelogues and local texts pointing to Betor's significance back then.
It really builds a picture of Howrah as this key transit point, a trade hub even centuries ago. And these places even showed up on early maps, I gather.
Yes, indeed. Places like Betor and also Shibpur within Howrah, they appear on historical maps, like the one by Dabaros from 1553.
Mid-16th century.
And later on Rennell's map, that's from 1779-80. So again, it just underscores their established presence, their importance in the region's geography and trade.
Okay, so we've journeyed through ancient kingdoms, medieval ports. Now we arrive at the modern era. And this is really where the British influence, and especially industrial growth, seems to take center stage.
This period definitely marks a huge transformation for Howrah. It starts pretty early, relatively speaking. In 1713, the British East India Company formally requested settlement rights.
Right.
And that request specifically included 5 villages on the western bank of the Hooghly.
And these 5 villages, they're important for understanding modern Howrah, aren't they?
They really are. The historical records from 1714 list them as Salika, which is now Salkia.
Okay.
Harira, remember that name from the origin theories?
Yes.
Sundia, Ramkrishnapur, and
Betor, there it is again.
Betor again. And they're all part of Howrah city now.
Every single one.
Okay.
They form integral parts of modern Howrah city. So you can see that direct lineage from these early settlements to the urban center we know today. It's quite a tangible connection.
It really is. And administratively, how did control evolve under the British?
Well, initially around 1728, the region was under the zamindari system, land control, revenue collection.
Yep.
It fell under the zamindaris of Bardhaman and Muhammad Aminpur. But the pivotal moment came in 1760. That was after the Battle of Plassey.
Right.
A treaty with Nawab Mir Qasim basically granted the British East India Company authority over the entire Howrah district.
So that's when British control really cemented itself. But Howrah itself wasn't immediately a separate district, was it? Its status kept changing. It did for quite a while. It was a bit of a journey administratively. In 1760, it was part of Bardhaman. Then, after the company got the Diwani rights in 1765, giving them broader control, it came fully under British administration. But then, in 1795, Hooghly was separated from Bardhaman to form a new district, and Howrah became part of that new Hooghly district.
Okay, so still tied to Hooghly.
For a long time.
Yeah.
It only got separate criminal jurisdiction, sort of a step towards independence, around 1917-18. But it wasn't until January 1st, 1938, that Howrah was formally recognized as a fully independent district.
1938. That's much later than I might have guessed.
It took a while, a long journey to becoming its own administrative unit.
And even after independence, there were more changes in how it fit regionally.
Yes, a couple more shifts.
Yeah.
After 1947, Howrah was initially part of the Bardhaman Division. That lasted until 1963.
Okay.
After 63, it was included in the Presidency Division. And then a really significant milestone for the city itself came on July 24th, 1965.
What happened then?
That's when Howrah City was granted the status of a municipal corporation.
Yeah.
That really put it on par, administratively, with a major urban center like Kolkata.
Right, okay. So we see this gradual consolidation, recognition of Howrah. Now, let's dive into the industrial development. Because the sources really hammer home Howrah's role as an industrial powerhouse, this feels like a major identity shift.
Absolutely, a huge shift. From the late 18th century onwards, really, the banks of the Hooghly in Howrah just started buzzing with industry. One of the very earliest examples was a shipbuilding and repair yard.
Just build them, okay.
Established in Salkia way back in 1796, which highlights, the river's continued importance, but now for a different kind of economic activity.
And then the mills started appearing. I read about India's first cotton mill being there. That sounds like a major event.
It is a key point, definitely. India's very first cotton mill was set up in Baria within Howrah district in 1817.
Wow. 1817.
And what's remarkable is that legacy continues. Even today, the district still has around 40 cotton mills operating.
40. Still, that's significant. Shows how early they adopted that technology. And it wasn't just cotton, was it? Oil and jute were big, too.
They were. In 1830, Jessup Company started an oil mill in Howrah. That apparently spurred the growth of other oil mills nearby. And then jute, of course, hugely important for Bengal.
Mm-hmm.
The first jute mill in the district was set up near Guzuri at a place called Fort Gloucester in 1873. And again, that legacy persists. Howrah currently has about 20 jute mills.
20 jute mills still.
Yeah. And we also see things like rope manufacturing units popping up in Shibpur and Salkia. So a real diversification of industrial activity was happening.
It sounds like a real hub then. Different kinds of manufacturing all feeding into its economy. And we can't forget the big engineering firms. The sources call them industrial giants.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And rightly so. Companies like Byrne & Co., Howrah Foundry, Jenkin Company, they set up major foundry and engineering hubs right there in Howrah. These were absolutely crucial, providing the nuts and bolts for infrastructure development across the region, not just locally.
Which leads perfectly into those infrastructure projects. The railway station, the bridge, they must have poured fuel on this industrial fire.
Exactly. They were game changers. The establishment of Howrah Station in 1854, massive. It connected Howrah and everything around it to the growing railway network.
Right.
Then the extension of that line to Mughalsarai in 1862 just amplified the impact further. Think about moving raw materials in, finished goods out. So much easier.
Absolutely.
And then the Howrah Bridge, the old pontoon bridge built in 1874, provided that vital physical link across the Hooghly River. Again, boosting trade, movement of people, goods, everything.
You can really see how all these pieces fit together to create this industrial engine. And then there's Mangla Haat. That sounds like a fascinating bit of local history.
It is. It's a great story. Apparently, back in the mid-19th century, weavers from Howrah, but also from nearby Hooghly and Midnapore, they requested a marketplace.
So the weavers initiated it.
Seems so. And the Malik family of Untold, they founded Mangla Haat in response. Its original spot was a place called Chardanga. Over time, it just grew and grew, eventually becoming the commercial heart of Howrah, a real testament to local enterprise and the enduring importance of trade.
So putting all this together, the heavy industry, the foundries, the engineering, the infrastructure, it's no wonder Howrah got that nickname. Sheffield of Bengal, it really paints a picture.
That's precisely right. During the first half of the 20th century, that nickname was common. Howrah was known for its heavy industries, its foundries, much like Sheffield in England was famous for steel.
Yeah.
And look, while the industrial landscape has definitely changed since then, evolved quite a bit. It's important to remember, Howrah still holds a leading position in medium and heavy industries today. That industrial identity hasn't completely disappeared.
Okay, so to kind of wrap up our deep dive here, we've seen Howrah journey from this ancient kingdom, Bhurshut, rooted in trade,
Hmm.
to a really significant medieval port adapting as the rivers changed,
Right.
and then transforming into this vital industrial center in the modern era, earning that Sheffield of Bengal title. It's just a story of constant transformation, adaptation, driven by trade, geography, and sheer human enterprise, really.
Absolutely. A fantastic summary. And hopefully, by exploring all these layers, you, our listeners, now have a much richer, deeper understanding of all the forces and events that have shaped this really fascinating region over so many centuries.
Definitely. And it really leaves you with a question to ponder, doesn't it? Considering this incredibly rich past from those early rich past, from those early merchant routes, right through to its major industrial heritage, what future innovations might emerge from Howrah? What comes next, building on such a deep foundation? Something for you to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.